Get ready to dive into the adrenaline-pumping world of Battlefield. Whether you've been dodging bullets since the early days, or you're new to the franchise, this video will take you on a thrilling journey through the history of one of the most iconic first-person shooter series ever created. From epic large-scale battles to intense close-quarters combat, Battlefield has redefined online multiplayer gaming. In this episode, you're going to explore the evolution of the Battlefield series, its groundbreaking moments, explosive gameplay innovations, and the unforgettable titles that have captured the hearts of millions. Ever wondered how it all began, or what makes Battlefield stand out? You'll delve into its origins, landmark releases, and the trends it set in the gaming world. So buckle up, gear up, and get ready to relive the epic moments and monumental battles that have shaped Battlefield into the legendary series you know and love. Ready to jump in? Let's charge into the front line together. This is the Great Battlefield History, and this is nerdsection.com. Battlefield 1942, developed by the Swedish video game company DICE and published by Electronic Arts, catapulted onto the gaming scene in 2002 and forever altered the landscape of first-person shooters. This seminal game prominently features World War II as its backdrop, allowing players to participate in some of the most iconic battles across almost every theater of war, from Europe to the Pacific. Battlefield 1942 was not the first game under the Battlefield banner, but it was undoubtedly the one that put the franchise on the map and defined its future trajectory. The game differentiates itself from others in the genre through its grand scale and innovative gameplay mechanics. One of the most revolutionary aspects of Battlefield 1942 is its emphasis on large-scale team-based multiplayer combat. Players can choose from 5 different classes: Scout, Assault, Anti-Tank, Medic, and Engineer, each with unique roles and abilities. These classes necessitate teamwork and strategy, promoting a balanced and cooperative gameplay experience. Battlefield 1942 offers an array of vehicles that players can command, including tanks, aircraft, ships, and jeeps, adding a layer of depth rarely seen in shooters at the time. This vehicle-focused combat allows for dynamic battlefield experiences and requires players to master different types of warfare, whether on land, sea, or air. It was a marvel to experience for players who had previously been confined to on-foot combat in other games. Another component of Battlefield 1942 that stood out was its Capture the Flag-inspired control point system. The primary objective in most of the game's modes is to capture and hold various control points scattered across expansive maps. Victory goes to the team that can effectively coordinate attacks and defense maneuvers, making strategic planning as crucial as individual skill. However, Battlefield 1942 was not without its drawbacks. Many players encountered bugs and technical issues, particularly in online multiplayer matches. Server stability was a frequent complaint, and some felt that the game's balancing between different classes and vehicles left something to be desired. Despite these issues, patches and community mods eventually alleviated many of these problems, allowing the game's strong core mechanics to shine through. A significant aspect of the game's charm was its immersive historical narrative. While Battlefield 1942 doesn't follow a traditional storyline, it lets players relive significant World War II battles such as the Battle of Stalingrad, the invasion of Normandy, and the Pacific Island engagements. Each of these scenarios is meticulously detailed, providing a sense of authenticity and historical context that goes beyond mere background setting. Unlike modern installments of the Battlefield series, Battlefield 1942 didn't feature a single-player campaign. Instead, it offered a series of multiplayer maps that could also be played against AI bots. This focus on multiplayer combat is in stark contrast to later entries in the series, which began incorporating more narrative-driven single-player campaigns to expand their appeal. Upon release, Battlefield 1942 was available on Microsoft Windows and later on Apple Macintosh. The game was a commercial success and generally well received by both critics and players. It sold millions of copies worldwide and earned numerous accolades, including several Game of the Year awards, solidifying its place as a landmark title in the genre. In conclusion, Battlefield 1942 was a groundbreaking game that offered both innovative gameplay mechanics and an unprecedented level of historical immersion. While it had its share of technical issues, the game's strengths far outweighed its weaknesses. Its success not only demonstrated the potential for large-scale team-based shooters, but also laid the groundwork for future titles in the Battlefield series, establishing what would become one of the most enduring franchises in video gaming history. Battlefield Vietnam, released in 2004, stands as a significant installment in the Battlefield series, offering players a unique and immersive experience of the Vietnam War. This title followed in the footsteps of the original Battlefield 1942, which set a strong precedent with its large-scale multiplayer battles and historical context. Developed by Digital Illusion CE and published by Electronic Arts, Battlefield Vietnam diverged from World War II and ushered players into a more modern, guerrilla-style conflict, characterized by the asymmetrical warfare that defined the Vietnam War. The game was released on Microsoft Windows and presented several notable changes and enhancements over its predecessor. One of the standout features of Battlefield Vietnam was its revamped game engine, which allowed for more detailed graphics and smoother gameplay. The environmental design was remarkably improved, offering lush, dense jungles, winding rivers, and complex urban landscapes that encapsulated the varied terrains of Vietnam. This visual overhaul contributed greatly to the immersive experience, providing players with a realistic representation of the war-torn country. The gameplay mechanics also saw significant enhancements. Battlefield Vietnam introduced more extensive vehicle combat, including helicopters like the iconic UH-1 Huey, which became a symbol of the war. These helicopters added a new strategic layer to gameplay, enabling air assaults and rapid troop deployments. The improvement in vehicle physics and weaponry provided players with a more dynamic and engaging combat experience, reflecting the technological shift from World War II to the Vietnam era. Battlefield Vietnam's weaponry further distinguished it from Battlefield 1942. Players had access to era-specific guns and gadgets, such as M16 rifles and the AK-47, which catered to the differing playstyles and strategies of US and Viet Cong forces. The game also introduced booby traps and guerrilla tactics, emphasizing a more tactical and varied approach to engagements, unlike the straightforward combat of its predecessor. Though Battlefield Vietnam made significant strides in gameplay and design, it was not without its drawbacks. The game initially faced criticism for its steep system requirements, which rendered it inaccessible to players with lower-end PCs. Moreover, some players felt that the game lacked the balanced mechanics seen in Battlefield 1942, particularly criticizing the perceived advantage given to helicopter pilots, which could disrupt the game's competitive equilibrium. In terms of narrative, Battlefield Vietnam did not have a dedicated single-player campaign, but offered historical context for its maps and missions. These scenarios were inspired by real events and battles, such as the Tet Offensive and the Battle of Hue, offering players a glimpse into the significant moments of the Vietnam War. The multiplayer experience was enriched with broadcast snippets of American rock and roll music from the 60s, further immersing players in the period's atmosphere. Despite its challenges, Battlefield Vietnam enjoyed considerable success and popularity among players, particularly for its robust multiplayer mode. It cemented itself as a crucial entry in the Battlefield franchise, demonstrating significant advancements and providing a template for future developments in the series. Following its release, Battlefield Vietnam was lauded for its innovation and became a beloved title within the gaming community. Its combination of improved mechanics, enriched environments, and period-specific details created an authentic and engaging depiction of the Vietnam War, which resonated with many players and set a high bar for the series' subsequent entries. Battlefield 2, released in 2005, is a pivotal installment in the long-running Battlefield series developed by Digital Illusion CE, commonly known as DICE, and published by Electronic Arts. The game was released exclusively for Microsoft Windows, continuing the franchise's strong presence on the PC platform. Set in the early 21st century, Battlefield 2 leans heavily into modern warfare, a shift from its predecessor, Battlefield Vietnam, which was set during the Vietnam War. The game's narrative revolves around a fictional conflict between three powerful factions: the United States Marine Corps, the Chinese People's Liberation Army, and the fictional Middle Eastern Coalition. These factions battle for supremacy across various global locations, each with their own distinct environments that significantly impact gameplay strategies. One of the key differentiators of Battlefield 2 compared to previous games is its robust multiplayer experience, accommodating up to 64 players in a single match. This scale creates an immersive combat experience, emphasizing teamwork and strategy. Players choose from one of 7 classes, each with unique gadgets and weapons, promoting a balanced and cooperative playstyle. Classes range from Assault, equipped with powerful rifles and grenades, to the Medic, who can heal and revive teammates, enhancing the collaborative nature of the game. The game is renowned for its advanced graphics engine for the time, offering detailed environments, realistic physics, and destructible elements that add an extra layer of tactical depth. This level of realism was a significant leap from the more rudimentary graphics of Battlefield 1942 and Battlefield Vietnam. Battlefield 2 also introduced a new squad system, allowing players to form small battalions within the larger team, reinforcing communication and command through a dedicated squad leader. This feature became a cornerstone of tactical gameplay and was highly praised by the game's community. However, Battlefield 2 was not without its flaws. At launch, the game was plagued with bugs and performance issues, which frustrated many players. Server stability was a significant problem, and balancing issues between the different factions led to calls for patches and updates. Additionally, the game's ranking system, which rewarded players with new weapons and equipment, was initially criticized for being too grind-heavy, requiring excessive playtime to unlock the full arsenal. Despite these issues, the core gameplay mechanics were strong enough to keep players engaged. The diverse map design, featuring urban environments, deserts, and forests, coupled with the variety of vehicles from tanks to helicopters, ensured that no 2 matches were ever the same. This diversity kept the game fresh and exciting, helping it build a dedicated player base. The single-player component, although overshadowed by the multiplayer experience, allowed players to practice against AI bots, providing a valuable training ground for new players before jumping into the competitive online environment. The single-player mode was often seen as a stepping stone rather than the main attraction, highlighting DICE's focus on online multiplayer. Battlefield 2 was both a commercial and critical success. It sold over 1 million copies within months of release and received numerous awards for its innovative gameplay and graphic fidelity. It holds a prominent place in gaming history as a major influence on future first-person shooters, setting a high bar for large-scale multiplayer combat. In summary, Battlefield 2 represented a significant evolution in the Battlefield series, moving from historical to modern combat, enhancing multiplayer experiences with larger battles, and introducing new tactical elements that bolstered its reputation. While initially hampered by technical issues, the game's strong fundamentals ensured it remained popular and influential, cementing its status as a classic in the genre. Battlefield 2 Modern Combat was initially released for the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and later Xbox 360. The adaptation for home consoles was significant. It had to cater to different hardware capabilities and audience expectations compared to the PC-exclusive titles that preceded it. This transition invited both positive and negative reactions from the gaming community. One of the standout features of Battlefield 2, Modern Combat, was its robust multiplayer experience. It featured large-scale battles that could support up to 24 players on consoles, a notable technical achievement at the time. The game introduced a variety of contemporary military vehicles, weapons, and equipment, offering players an extensive arsenal to master. The multiplayer component was lauded for retaining the series' signature blend of infantry and vehicular combat, which had endeared it to fans since its inception. However, the single-player campaign of Battlefield 2 Modern Combat did not meet the same high standards. The story was set against the backdrop of a fictional war between NATO and China in Kazakhstan, notable for its non-linear progression and multiple perspectives. Players experienced the conflict through the eyes of various soldiers on both sides, a narrative approach that added depth and complexity to the storyline, yet the single-player mode was criticized for its lackluster AI, repetitive missions, and subpar narrative engagement, which some felt could not match the intensity and immersion of the multiplayer experience. Comparing Battlefield 2 Modern Combat to its predecessors such as Battlefield 1942 and Battlefield Vietnam, it's clear that DICE aimed to innovate while staying true to the core mechanics that made the series popular. Earlier installments were famed for their historical settings and large-scale PC battles featuring up to 64 players, significantly more than what Modern Combat supported on console. Additionally, the previous games had a deeper focus on strategic team-based gameplay, which was somewhat simplified to accommodate the different audience and hardware of consoles. Visually, Battlefield 2 Modern Combat was a mixed bag. On the PlayStation 2 and original Xbox, the graphics were considered decent but not groundbreaking. The Xbox 360 version, however, showcased improved visuals, taking advantage of the then new generation's hardware capabilities to deliver more detailed environments and smoother gameplay. Reception to Battlefield 2 Modern Combat was generally positive. Players and critics alike praised its multiplayer mode, especially its seamless integration of different types of combat and the variety of maps. However, the game's single-player campaign was often seen as a missed opportunity, holding it back from reaching the heights of its multiplayer prowess. Despite these criticisms, Battlefield 2 Modern Combat was overall successful, selling well and expanding the reach of the Battlefield series into the console market. As a pivotal entry in the Battlefield series, Battlefield 2 Modern Combat demonstrated both the strengths and growing pains of translating a beloved PC franchise to consoles. While it didn't completely escape the shadow of its predecessors, it nonetheless carved out its own niche and contributed to the evolution of the series, paving the way for future console-focused Battlefield games. Battlefield 2142, released in 2006, is a noteworthy installment in the acclaimed Battlefield series developed by DICE and published by EA. Diverging from its predecessors that were deeply rooted in historical settings, Battlefield 2142 takes a bold leap into the future, setting its narrative in a dystopian world ravaged by a new ice age. The game was launched on Windows and Mac, offering a fresh and innovative experience to longtime fans and newcomers alike. The storyline of this Battlefield unfolds in the year 2142, where a new ice age has reduced much of the Earth's surface to harsh, frozen wastelands. The struggle for survival drives nations to the brink of desperation. Two superpowers emerge in this new world order, the European Union and the Pan-Asian Coalition. These factions are locked in a relentless battle over the remaining habitable land, which is rapidly dwindling. The narrative's futuristic setting allows for imaginative technological advancements in weaponry and vehicles, setting a distinct tone for the game compared to earlier entries. Gameplay in Battlefield 2142 maintains the series' signature large-scale battles and team-based combat, but introduces several futuristic elements. Players can engage in combat using a variety of high-tech equipment and vehicles, including the iconic Battle Walkers, a type of mechanical walker that adds a new layer of strategy to the battlefield. The game also features Titan Mode, a unique game mode where players must destroy the enemy's massive floating Titan while simultaneously defending their own. This mode adds depth and a strategic twist to the classic Battlefield formula, requiring teams to coordinate both offensive and defensive strategies effectively. However, not all changes were universally lauded. The futuristic setting and new mechanics were a double-edged sword for Battlefield 2142. While many players appreciated the fresh direction and innovative gameplay features, others missed the historical authenticity and grounded combat experiences of previous Battlefield games. The game also faced technical difficulties, including bugs and server issues, which dampened the initial player experience. Despite these setbacks, DICE continually worked on patches to improve stability and gameplay, eventually smoothing out many of these problems. Comparatively, Battlefield 2142 stands apart from its predecessors, such as Battlefield 1942, Battlefield Vietnam, and Battlefield 2, which focused on World War II, the Vietnam War, and modern combat scenarios respectively. The leap to a futuristic setting marked a significant shift in thematic and gameplay elements for the series. Previous games were celebrated for their historical accuracy and realism, while Battlefield 2142 opted for speculative fiction and imaginative technology. This divergence allowed for more creative freedom in game design, but also risked alienating a portion of the loyal fanbase. Commercially, Battlefield 2142 enjoyed a fair amount of success, selling over 1 million copies by the end of 2006. The game garnered a generally positive reception from critics, who praised its innovative Titan mode and the new direction for the series. Player reviews were more mixed. While many enjoyed the fresh take and futuristic aesthetics, some were less enthused by the deviations from the franchise's roots and the initial technical issues. In summary, Battlefield 2142 represents a bold and ambitious chapter in the Battlefield series. Its futuristic premise, innovative gameplay mechanics, and grand scale provide a unique gaming experience that stands apart from its historical predecessors. Though it faced challenges both in terms of technical execution and fan reception, it ultimately carved out its own place in the annals of gaming history. The game's blend of new ideas and series staples ensured that it left a lasting impact on both the Battlefield franchise and the wider genre of first-person shooters. Enjoying the nerdy content? Hit that like button and subscribe for more awesome videos. Battlefield Bad Company, released in 2008 by DICE and published by Electronic Arts, marked a significant departure from the previous installments within the Battlefield franchise. Known for its signature multiplayer experiences and expansive maps, the series took a bold, new direction with Bad Company, introducing a more narrative-driven approach while maintaining its established multiplayer foundations. Set during a fictional modern warfare scenario, Battlefield Bad Company follows the misadventures of Preston Marlowe and his squad of ragtag soldiers, Private Terrence Sweetwater, Private George Gordon Haggard Jr., and their cynical yet resilient Sergeant Samuel D. Redford. Collectively known as Bad Company, this squad defies the usual military protocol, continually finding themselves in humorous and perilous situations. The story kicks off with the squad discovering that mercenaries they are battling against are being paid in gold bars, thus diverting their mission towards personal gain. This pursuit of gold introduces an array of morally ambiguous choices, bringing a refreshing narrative twist to the Battlefield series. Before Bad Company, Battlefield titles such as Battlefield 1942, Battlefield Vietnam, and Battlefield 2 had primarily focused on providing large-scale, multiplayer-centric experiences devoid of fleshed-out single-player narratives. Bad Company was distinct in that it aimed to offer a compelling single-player campaign alongside its robust multiplayer. The Frostbite engine, making its debut with this installment, allowed for a new level of destructible environments, enhancing both the gameplay and narrative immersion. Buildings could be blown apart, cover structures could be decimated, and the terrain could be strategically altered to gain a tactical advantage over enemies. This destructibility was a massive step forward from previous entries, which had static environments and limited interactivity. Released for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, Battlefield Bad Company garnered mostly positive reviews, praised for its engaging single-player campaign, witty and well-voiced characters, and the groundbreaking destructible environments. Reviewers lauded the game's humor and story, which stood in contrast to the more serious, somber tones of other war games at the time. The multiplayer retained the classic Battlefield dynamics, featuring large maps, a variety of vehicles, and team-based gameplay, along with new modes such as Gold Rush, where teams either defended or attacked gold crates, further augmenting its replay value. However, Battlefield Bad Company wasn't without its criticisms. Some players felt that the shift towards a more narrative-focused single player could detract from the multiplayer experience, which had been the franchise's stronghold. The single-player campaign, while innovative and humorous, was criticized for having some repetitive mission structures and occasional pacing issues. Furthermore, there were technical constraints on the consoles of that era, limiting the player count in multiplayer matches compared to what was possible on PC with earlier titles. From a commercial standpoint, Battlefield Bad Company was a success. It managed to strike a balance between expanding the series' narrative potential and retaining the core multiplayer elements beloved by fans. The introduction of the Frostbite engine also set the groundwork for future Battlefield titles to implement even more intricate destruction mechanics, solidifying it as a powerful tool for both realism and strategic depth in the gaming landscape. Overall, Battlefield Bad Company's critical and commercial achievements were indicative of the franchise's ability to innovate while respecting its roots. It managed to win over players with its unique blend of humor, strategy, and destruction, ensuring its place as a beloved entry in the storied Battlefield franchise. Battlefield Heroes, released in 2009, was a significant departure from the traditional Battlefield series. Developed by DICE and published by Electronic Arts, Battlefield Heroes was a free-to-play, cartoon-style third-person shooter that featured lighter, more accessible gameplay compared to its predecessors. Unlike the serious tone and realistic graphics of earlier Battlefield games, this title opted for a more whimsical and exaggerated visual style, clearly inspired by Team Fortress 2. The game was set in a fictional world during World War II, but presented in a humorous and over-the-top manner. Players could choose between two factions, the Royal Army, inspired by the Allies, and the National Army, reminiscent of the Axis powers. The characters were colorful, the environments vibrant, and the overall aesthetic was designed to be appealing to a broad range of players, from casual gamers to Battlefield veterans. Gameplay-wise, Battlefield Heroes simplified the traditional Battlefield mechanics. There were no complex squad systems, and the emphasis was on fast-paced, fun combat rather than strategic depth. The controls were straightforward, and the game was designed to be accessible, making it easy for new players to jump in and enjoy. Each character could be customized with various outfits and accessories, contributing to a playful and personal experience. Vehicles such as tanks and planes were also available, maintaining some of the classic Battlefield flavor but in a much more simplified form. One of the game's primary innovations was its business model. Battlefield Heroes was one of EA's first forays into the free-to-play market, funded primarily through microtransactions. Players could purchase battle funds and in-game currency to buy cosmetic items and experience boosts. This approach was somewhat controversial, as it sparked debates about the pay-to-win nature of the game. Some criticized that spending money gave certain players an unfair advantage, which detracted from the skill-based competition that fans valued. Despite these criticisms, Battlefield Heroes enjoyed a degree of popularity, particularly in its early years. Its fun, accessible gameplay, and unique art style attracted a new audience who might not have been interested in the more serious tone of previous Battlefield games. The game featured a progression system where players could level up their characters and unlock new abilities, adding an element of long-term engagement. In terms of story, Battlefield Heroes didn't offer a deep or complex narrative. Instead, the focus was on the skirmishes between the comical, larger-than-life factions. The lack of a traditional story was in line with the game's overall design, which emphasized quick, enjoyable matches rather than a plot-driven experience. Battlefield Heroes differed significantly from its predecessors in several ways. The original Battlefield 1942 set the standard for the series with its large-scale, strategic, first-person combat set in World War II. Subsequent titles like Battlefield 2 and Battlefield 2142 continued to build on this formula, introducing modern and futuristic settings and more in-depth gameplay mechanics. In contrast, Battlefield Heroes eschewed this complexity for a more casual and arcade-like experience, which was both a strength and a weakness. The game was initially launched on Windows PC, making it accessible to a wide audience. There was no console release, which limited its potential player base but allowed the developers to focus their efforts on optimizing the game for a single platform. Ultimately, Battlefield Heroes was a mixed success. Although it managed to carve out a niche audience and contributed to the evolving landscape of free-to-play games, it struggled to maintain its player base over time. The game's servers were eventually shut down in 2015, marking the end of its run. However, its legacy lives on as an early example of a major publisher experimenting with the free-to-play model and a lighter, more casual approach to a traditionally hardcore series. Overall, Battlefield Heroes is remembered fondly by those who enjoyed its unique take on the Battlefield formula, even if it didn't achieve the long-term success of its more serious counterparts. Battlefield 1943, released in 2009 by DICE and published by Electronic Arts, is a notable entry in the long-standing Battlefield series. This game marked an innovative shift for the franchise, diverging from its predecessors both in scope and gameplay mechanics. Its release platforms included Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, with a planned but ultimately cancelled PC version. Battlefield 1943 takes players back to World War II, specifically to the intense Pacific Theater, and reimagines the classic conflict with modern graphical refinements and streamlined mechanics. Key battles such as those on the iconic islands of Wake Island, Guadalcanal, and Iwo Jima are vividly brought to life, offering players the chance to engage in large-scale warfare as either the United States Marine Corps or the Imperial Japanese Navy. Unlike earlier Battlefield games that often included expansive single-player campaigns, Battlefield 1943 focused exclusively on multiplayer gameplay. This decision was both an innovative simplification and a point of contention among players. With 3 available maps and 4 classes, Rifleman, Infantry, Scout, and Pilot, the game provided a condensed but highly engaging Battlefield experience. Its Frostbite engine allowed for dynamic destruction, creating constantly shifting battle landscapes, which was a significant enhancement from previous titles like Battlefield 1942 and Battlefield 2. Battlefield 1943's simplicity in design was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it garnered praise for its accessibility, making it easy for new players to jump in and enjoy the massive 24-player battles. The polished graphics and sound design added a layer of immersion that was highly praised. Moreover, the game's pick-up-and-play nature made it a favorite for console players looking for quick yet intense combat sessions. However, the limited map selection and lack of a single-player campaign left some longtime fans yearning for the deeper experiences of earlier titles. Critics noted the absence of variety that earlier Battlefield installments boasted, such as the myriad vehicles and diverse environments found in Battlefield 2 or the sprawling historical settings of Battlefield 1942. Despite this, the game received generally favorable reviews, achieving commendable scores from various gaming publications for its refined combat mechanics and enjoyable multiplayer modes. Commercially, Battlefield 1943 was a success. It broke records for the fastest-selling downloadable game globally on both the Xbox Live Marketplace and PlayStation Network. The game's popularity persisted due to its engaging gameplay loop and the reputation the Battlefield series had established over the years. Battlefield 1943 stands out in the series as a focused, multiplayer-only experience that modernized the core elements of the early Battlefield games. While it may not have offered the depth of its predecessors, its streamlined approach and modern technological advancements helped it to carve out its own niche within the franchise. Its success underscored the versatility of the Battlefield series, demonstrating that even a pared-down version could still deliver compelling and memorable gaming experiences. Available on PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Windows in 2010, Battlefield Bad Company 2 is the direct sequel to Battlefield Bad Company and is part of the larger Battlefield series, known for its large-scale battles and infantry vehicle combat. The Bad Company sub-series diverges from the main Battlefield games by embedding humor and a more engaging, character-driven narrative. Set during a modern-day conflict, the story of Bad Company 2 follows the four-member B Company on a mission to thwart a Russian attempt to unleash a weapon of mass destruction that can cause an electromagnetic pulse, effectively destabilizing entire nations' defenses. Bad Company 2 builds upon its predecessor with several improvements and new features. The game utilizes DICE's Frostbite 1.5 engine, which enhances the destructibility of environments, a hallmark of the franchise. Almost every structure in the game can be damaged or destroyed, adding a dynamic, tactical layer to gameplay. The Levolution feature lets players alter the battlefield in real time, meaning a house used for cover can quickly be reduced to rubble by mortar fire, forcing players to constantly adapt their strategies. Graphically, Bad Company 2 stands out with highly detailed environments and realistic character models even by today's standards. The sound design is another strong point, with impactful sound effects, authentic weapon noises, and immersive ambient sounds that bring the chaotic battlefield to life. The game offers a mix of both single-player and multiplayer modes. The single-player campaign is appreciated for its engaging story and humor, driven by the well-crafted personalities of the team members. The wisecracking Marlowe, the gruff Sarge, the nerdy Sweetwater, and the explosive-obsessed Haggard. Their interactions provide a refreshing change from the often stoic and serious tone typical of military shooters. Multiplayer is where Battlefield Bad Company 2 truly shines. Known for its large maps, robust vehicle combat, and team-based objective modes, it provides a deep and rewarding experience. The multiplayer introduces varied classes like Assault, Engineer, Medic, and Recon, each with unique roles and equipment promoting team play. With unlockable weapons, gadgets, and specializations, as well as a wide array of vehicles including tanks, helicopters, and ATVs, players can engage in dynamic and large-scale battles that rarely play out the same way twice. However, the game is not without its criticisms. Some players find the single-player campaign relatively short and linear compared to other contemporary shooters. The AI in the campaign can sometimes feel rudimentary, with predictable enemy actions and occasional pathfinding issues. On the multiplayer front, certain balance issues have been noted, such as the overpowered nature of specific weapons or gadgets, leading to patches and updates from DICE to address player concerns. Battlefield Bad Company 2 was a commercial success, and generally well received by both critics and players. It sold millions of copies and earned numerous awards for its multiplayer experience and technical achievements. The blend of a compelling story with humor, along with the extensive multiplayer content, made it stand out in the crowded FPS market of its time. It also set the stage for future innovations in destructible environments and large-scale combat within the Battlefield series. Compared to its predecessor, Bad Company 2 is seen as a robust evolution, improving upon many aspects such as graphics, environmental interactions, and multiplayer depth, while retaining the distinct charm of the Bad Company squad. It attracted both fans of the first game and new players, contributing to its lasting legacy in video game history. Battlefield Online, released in 2010, is an intriguing chapter in the storied Battlefield franchise. As the name suggests, Battlefield Online is a multiplayer-focused game that was introduced to cater specifically to the South Korean gaming community. Leveraging the mechanics and design principles that made Battlefield 2 and Battlefield 2142 successful, Battlefield Online brought a fresh yet familiar experience to an entirely new demographic. One of the significant differences between Battlefield Online and its predecessors lies in its development and publishing journey. Battlefield Online was co-developed by DICE, the original creators of Battlefield, and NeoWiz Games, a South Korean video game developer. This unique collaboration intended to tap into the ever-growing online gaming market in South Korea, a country known for its robust PC gaming culture. The game was designed and optimized for PC, which is a standard platform in South Korean gaming circles. Another prominent distinction is the game's free-to-play model. Unlike earlier titles in the Battlefield series where players purchased the game up front, Battlefield Online employed a free-to-play model with microtransactions. This model allowed players to access the game at no initial cost, a strategy aimed at increasing its user base. Players could spend real money on various in-game items, such as cosmetic upgrades and weapon packs, which contributed to the game's revenue. The core gameplay of Battlefield Online maintained the large-scale, team-based combat that fans loved about the series. Players chose from a variety of soldier classes such as Assault, Engineer, Medic, and Recon, each with its unique role and equipment. The game featured expansive maps that enabled vehicular combat with tanks, helicopters, and other military vehicles available to players. These elements were drawn directly from Battlefield 2, ensuring that the gameplay experience felt familiar to longtime fans. However, Battlefield Online was not without its shortcomings. One of the primary criticisms revolved around the implementation of the microtransaction system. Some players felt that the game leaned towards a pay-to-win model, where those willing to spend money could gain significant advantages over others, disrupting the balance and fairness quintessential to competitive multiplayer experiences. This issue was exacerbated by the relatively high cost of in-game items, which created a divide within the player community. Despite these challenges, there were many positives. The game boasted visually impressive graphics powered by the enhanced Battlefield 2 engine. The maps were well designed, offering varied terrains and strategic points that encouraged tactical gameplay. Moreover, the game's focus on team coordination and strategic planning added depth to the combat experience, making it more engaging. Story-wise, Battlefield Online did not offer a single-player campaign, a feature that is common in many other Battlefield titles. Instead, the game emphasized the ongoing conflict between different factions, much like its predecessor Battlefield 2. It painted a global war scenario where players could choose to fight for either the United States Marine Corps or the Middle Eastern Coalition, each with their unique weapons and equipment sets. Reception towards Battlefield Online was mixed. In terms of player base, the game initially saw a strong uptake thanks to the free-to-play model and the established reputation of the Battlefield franchise. The South Korean market showed a particular affinity for the game, owing to the region-specific tweaks made during development. However, as time went on, the pay-to-win aspects and other balancing issues seemed to overshadow the initial excitement. The game did not achieve the lasting success of some other Battlefield titles, but remains a noteworthy experiment in the franchise's history. Overall, Battlefield Online serves as an interesting case study in adapting a well-known Western IP to fit the tastes and preferences of an Eastern gaming market. While it had its share of both applause and criticism, its existence reflects the ever-evolving strategies of game developers in reaching a global audience. The game may not have reached the iconic status of its peers, but it undoubtedly contributed to the rich tapestry of the Battlefield series. We appreciate your support. Like this video and subscribe to Nerd Section for more epic content on your favorite nerdy topics. Released in 2011, Battlefield Play for Free marked a significant point in the evolution of the Battlefield series. This game, developed by EA's Easy Studios, took the tried and tested Battlefield formula and introduced it to a new model. The free-to-play model, which was a relatively novel concept within the first-person shooter genre at the time. Unlike its predecessors, Battlefield Play for Free was exclusive to PC and offered players the essence of the Battlefield experience without the upfront cost. The game combined elements from Battlefield 2 and Battlefield Bad Company 2, amalgamating the best of both worlds. It featured large-scale battles with up to 32 players, iconic maps from Battlefield 2, and modern weaponry and gadgets from Bad Company 2. One of the standout features of Battlefield Play for Free was its blend of accessible gameplay with the depth that longtime fans of the series had come to expect. In terms of gameplay mechanics, Battlefield Play for Free remained true to the series' core principles. It retained the class-based system, which included Assault, Engineer, Medic, and Recon classes, each with unique weapons and abilities. Players could also access a variety of vehicles, from tanks to helicopters, further adding to the tactical depth and large-scale warfare feel the series is known for. However, some nuances differentiated it from the mainline entries. For instance, the game's progression system was more monetized. Players could purchase upgrades, weapons, and cosmetic items through microtransactions. This sparked debate within the community, with some feeling that the pay-to-win elements undermined the fairness and balance of the gameplay. While Battlefield Play for Free did not include a single-player campaign, it compensated with robust multiplayer offerings. The maps drawn from Battlefield 2 classics like Strike at Karkand and Gulf of Oman were updated with enhanced graphics and gameplay tweaks. Despite these positives, the game wasn't without its drawbacks. Criticism was often directed at the somewhat dated graphics and occasional technical issues, including bugs and connectivity problems, which marred the overall experience. Despite these criticisms, Battlefield Play for Free managed to garner a dedicated player base. Its free-to-play nature made it accessible to a wide audience, and for many, it served as an entry point into the Battlefield series. However, its lifespan was relatively short compared to other series entries. In 2015, EA announced the game's closure. While official reasons were never fully detailed, it's widely believed that the competition from other free-to-play titles and the gaming world's shift towards new platforms and experiences played significant roles. Comparatively, previous titles in the Battlefield series, such as Battlefield 2 and Bad Company 2, had a more stable presence in the gaming landscape. Battlefield 2, released in 2005, was praised for its innovative take on online multiplayer and its introduction of a commander mode, which allowed players to control the battlefield from an overhead strategic view. On the other hand, Bad Company 2, released in 2010, was lauded for its engaging single-player campaign, destructible environments thanks to the Frostbite engine, and tight multiplayer gameplay. Overall, Battlefield Play for Free was a bold experiment for the series. It succeeded in many areas, bringing the adrenaline-pumping, large-scale combat of Battlefield to a broader audience without an upfront cost. However, its reliance on microtransactions and the technical issues it faced ultimately limited its potential. Despite its relatively short-lived run, it remains an interesting chapter in the Battlefield franchise's storied history, highlighting the series' willingness to innovate and adapt to new market trends. Battlefield 3, released in 2011, marked a defining moment in the landscape of first-person shooters. The game made its debut on October 25th in North America and subsequently in other regions. It was available on multiple platforms: Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 3, and Xbox 360. The game's narrative thrusts players into the year 2014, weaving a complex and multi-threaded storyline. The plot centers on Sergeant Henry Blackburn, a U.S. Marine, as he recounts his experiences during a mission that takes place across various key locations, including Iran and New York City. The campaign's plot is rich with tension and conspiracy, evoking the chaos of global conflict and personal drama. Among the notable missions are Operation Guillotine, a harrowing nighttime assault on Tehran, and Going Hunting, a high-octane jet fighter mission. Each mission is crafted to be a visceral experience, designed to draw players deeply into its gripping narrative. Battlefield 3 differentiates itself from its predecessors in several significant ways. Technologically, it was the first game in the series to use the Frostbite 2 engine, allowing for extensive environmental destruction, more realistic lighting, and larger maps. This engine was a considerable upgrade over the Frostbite 1.5 engine used in Battlefield Bad Company 2, and it enabled a more immersive and visually stunning experience. Another standout feature of Battlefield 3 was its multiplayer component, which could support up to 64 players on PC, though console versions were limited to 24 players. The game reintroduced the concept of fighter jets to the franchise, which had been missing since Battlefield 2. The vast, sprawling maps provided an arena for varied combat, incorporating land, air, and sea vehicles, and crucially emphasized teamwork and strategic planning. However, Battlefield 3 was not without its criticisms. On release, the game was plagued by technical issues, particularly on the PC platform. Players reported crashes, server instability, and various bugs. The game's single-player campaign, while visually stunning and action-packed, was sometimes criticized for its linear design and reliance on scripted events, which some fans felt detracted from the otherwise expansive feel of the series. Moreover, the decision to require players to use EA's proprietary Origin platform on PC was a point of contention, leading to frustration among users who preferred other methods of game distribution and management. Despite these issues, Battlefield 3 was a commercial success and resonated well with its audience. It sold over 5 million copies within its first week of release. Critics praised its multiplayer mode, graphics, and sound design, which were considered some of the best in any shooter at the time. The game's use of real military tactics and technology was also highly lauded, providing an authentic experience that distinguished it from many of its competitors. In retrospective analysis, Battlefield 3 is remembered as a crucial installment in the franchise's evolution. It successfully built upon the legacy of its predecessors while pushing the boundaries of what a modern military shooter could achieve. Its influence can be seen in the subsequent titles in the Battlefield series, which continued to expand on the foundations that Battlefield 3 established. Overall, Battlefield 3 remains a beloved entry in the series, showcasing the blend of narrative depth and multiplayer mayhem that the franchise is known for. It's a game that, despite its initial flaws, stood the test of time and carved out its place in the annals of gaming history. Battlefield 4, released in 2013, stands as a notable entry in the well-regarded Battlefield series, which began with Battlefield 1942 in 2002. As the 11th installment in the franchise, Battlefield 4 was also developed by DICE and published by Electronic Arts. The game was launched across multiple platforms, including Windows, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, and Xbox One, thereby ensuring a wide reach among both PC and console gamers during a pivotal time when the 8th generation consoles were debuting. Set in the year 2020, Battlefield 4's narrative follows a complex geopolitical scenario featuring rising tensions between the United States, China, and Russia. Players step into the boots of Sergeant Daniel Wrecker, a member of the elite U.S. Marine Corps' Tombstone Squad. The plot revolves around the squad's efforts to thwart a coup in China led by Admiral Chang, who seeks to provoke war between China and the United States. As Wrecker, players navigate various locations ranging from the urban expanse of Shanghai to the war-torn streets of a fictionalized Singapore, tackling intense military operations and witnessing dramatic set pieces that are emblematic of the series' cinematic approach. On a gameplay level, Battlefield 4 refined many of the mechanics established in its predecessors, such as Battlefield 3. The game continued to emphasize large-scale multiplayer battles featuring vehicular and infantry combat. One of the defining features of Battlefield 4 was the introduction of Levolution, a dynamic system that allowed players to alter the environment in real time, significantly impacting tactics and strategies. This included spectacular events like the collapse of skyscrapers and the flooding of urban areas, elevating the level of immersion and unpredictability within matches. Graphically, the game benefited greatly from the capabilities of the then new Frostbite 3 engine, offering visually stunning environments and detailed character models. On the newer generation consoles and high-end PCs, the game delivered an impressive presentation, harnessing the power of advanced hardware to render realistic battle scenes. However, Battlefield 4 was not without its shortcomings. At launch, the game faced significant technical issues, including server instability, crashes, and various bugs that marred the experience for many players. These problems drew widespread criticism and led to a rocky start for what was otherwise a highly anticipated game. DICE and Electronic Arts worked extensively post-launch to address these issues through numerous patches and updates, which eventually stabilized the game and improved its performance. The multiplayer component, a hallmark of the Battlefield franchise, continued to thrive despite the initial hiccups. Battlefield 4 offered an extensive suite of game modes, from the traditional Conquest and Rush modes to newer additions like Obliteration and Defuse. This, coupled with a robust progression system and a diverse array of weapons and vehicles, ensured that the game remained engaging for dedicated players. The reintroduction of the Commander mode, which allowed one player to oversee and support their team through a top-down strategic interface, added an additional layer of depth to the gameplay. Classic Battlefield elements, such as destructible environments and scale, were further expanded upon, differentiating Battlefield 4 from its predecessors. The game's maps were designed to take full advantage of the Levolution feature, providing varied tactical landscapes that kept gameplay fresh and challenging. Commercially, Battlefield 4 was a success, selling millions of copies within its first year of release and receiving generally favorable reviews from critics. The improvements made post-launch helped restore its reputation, and it went on to develop a strong player base that contributed to its longevity. Its influence is evident in subsequent entries in the franchise, cementing its legacy as a pivotal game within the Battlefield series. In summary, Battlefield 4 marked both a high and a low point for the series. It showcased the potential for next-level immersive multiplayer experiences, while also serving as a reminder of the importance of a smooth launch. Despite its rocky start, the game's innovative features and the subsequent remediation of its technical issues allowed it to carve out a respected place in gaming history. Battlefield Hardline, released in 2015, marked a significant departure from the traditional military-focused theme of the Battlefield series. Developed by Visceral Games and published by EA, this installment shifted the battlefield from military zones to the urban landscapes of law enforcement and criminal activities. Available on platforms such as PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and Windows, Battlefield Hardline aimed to bring a fresh take on the established franchise. One of the most notable differences between Battlefield Hardline and its predecessors is in its thematic setting. Previous Battlefield games, such as Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, were centered around large-scale military warfare with grandiose battles, vehicles like tanks and jets, and a focus on in-game destructibility. Hardline, however, places players in the midst of a police drama, akin to popular crime TV shows, with an emphasis on cops versus criminals. This change of pace was both a point of intrigue and contention among longtime fans of the series. The single-player campaign in Battlefield Hardline tells the story through the eyes of Nick Mendoza, a detective navigating the treacherous world of drug cartels and internal corruption within the police force. The narrative is episodic, resembling a television show format complete with cliffhangers and episodic recaps. Players uncover a layered plot involving betrayal, as Mendoza himself becomes ensnared in a network of criminal activity that blurs the lines between law enforcers and lawbreakers. These story elements offered an engaging, albeit different experience compared to the more generic military plots of previous Battlefield campaigns. Despite its innovative approach, the campaign received mixed reviews. Critics praised the game for its engaging narrative and unique presentation, but were less enthused about certain gameplay mechanics. The stealth elements, while a welcome addition, sometimes felt undercooked and out of place in the franchise, known for its action-heavy sequences. Additionally, the AI behavior in the campaign could be inconsistent, occasionally breaking immersion. Battlefield Hardline's multiplayer mode remained true to the series' roots by offering large dynamic environments with destructible elements. However, even here, the setting change introduced new game modes like Heist and Blood Money, which revolved around classic cops and robbers scenarios rather than conventional military engagements. Fans of the series found the new modes to be refreshing, but the game's overall multiplayer experience was a mixed bag. Balancing issues and the smaller scale of urban combat zones clashed with veterans' expectations of sprawling maps and massive confrontations. Technically, Battlefield Hardline performed well across all platforms. The game employed the Frostbite 3 engine, which ensured stunning visuals and detailed environments. The audio design, a hallmark of the Battlefield series, continued to impress with realistic sound effects and an immersive soundtrack. However, the game wasn't devoid of technical hiccups. Issues such as server instability, especially during launch, and minor graphical bugs occasionally detracted from the experience. From a commercial standpoint, Battlefield Hardline achieved moderate success. While it sold well, it didn't reach the monumental sales figures of its predecessors. The title was popular among players upon release, largely due to the brand's loyal fanbase and the novel premise. However, comparative critiques highlighted that Hardline lacked the staying power and long-term appeal of earlier titles in the series. Its divergence from traditional Battlefield gameplay polarized the community, with some applauding the originality and others longing for the military combat scenarios they were accustomed to. In conclusion, Battlefield Hardline stands as a bold experiment within the Battlefield franchise, blending familiar multiplayer elements with an innovative single-player campaign rooted in the world of law enforcement and crime. It represents a unique chapter in the series, one that tested the boundaries of what a Battlefield game could be, even if it did not fully meet the high expectations set by its forebears. Battlefield 1, released in 2016, stands as a remarkable entry in the long-standing Battlefield series by Electronic Arts and DICE. As the 15th installment in the franchise, it takes a bold step by shifting the setting to World War I, a departure from the modern or futuristic warfare themes prominent in its predecessors. The game was launched on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Windows, ensuring widespread availability across major gaming platforms. The decision to set Battlefield 1 during World War I brought a breath of fresh air to the series. This era is relatively underrepresented in the world of first-person shooters, which generally lean towards contemporary conflicts or future wars. This choice allowed for diverse and unique gameplay experiences. Players encountered a wide array of World War I weaponry, from bolt-action rifles and early automatic weapons to flamethrowers and mustard gas, leading to a varied and engaging combat system. The game's single-player campaign stands out for its anthology structure. Rather than following a single protagonist through a linear storyline, Battlefield 1's campaign is divided into 6 war stories, each focusing on different characters and fronts of the war. Players experience the tales of a tank crew member, an Italian Arditi soldier, a Bedouin warrior fighting alongside Lawrence of Arabia, and more. This approach not only provides multiple perspectives on the global conflict, but also allows for emotionally impactful storytelling. Some missions are heart-pounding and action-packed, while others delve into the grim realities and moral ambiguities of war. Multiplayer, a cornerstone of the Battlefield series, also saw significant innovation in Battlefield 1. The game features large-scale battles with up to 64 players, a franchise hallmark, but the introduction of Operations Mode was a true game-changer. Operations span multiple maps and involve a series of objectives for offensive and defensive teams, encapsulating the sense of an extended campaign and strategic depth. This mode captured the chaotic frontline struggle of World War I warfare, contributing to the game's immersive quality. However, Battlefield 1 was not without its flaws. Despite its rich content, the game faced criticism for its historical inaccuracies. While some liberties can be forgiven for the sake of gameplay, certain anachronistic elements and overly dramatized scenarios drew ire from history enthusiasts. Additionally, the game's launch was plagued by technical issues common to many modern titles, including server instability and bugs, which occasionally marred the experience for early adopters. Comparing Battlefield 1 to its direct predecessor, Battlefield 4 highlights the radical shift DICE undertook. Battlefield 4 was renowned for its modern setting, advanced technology, and emphasis on vehicular warfare, transitioning to the comparatively primitive arsenals and brute force strategies of World War I required significant adjustments in game mechanics. For instance, vehicular combat in Battlefield 1 features early tanks and biplanes, which handle quite differently from the helicopters and jets of Battlefield 4. Additionally, the game's pace is more grounded and strategic, reflecting the trench warfare and attritional nature of the Great War, contrasting with the fast-paced, precision-centric gameplay of Battlefield 4. Commercially, Battlefield 1 was a resounding success. It garnered positive reviews across the board, with critics and players alike praising its ambitious setting, powerful storytelling, and dynamic multiplayer components. The game's fresh take on historical warfare resonated well, revitalizing interest in the series. Sales figures were robust, and it quickly became one of the top-selling games of the year, cementing its place in the annals of first-person shooter history. In conclusion, Battlefield 1's venture into World War I was a bold and largely triumphant move, offering gamers an immersive and emotionally impactful experience. While not without its historical and technical shortcomings, the game succeeded in delivering a compelling and innovative entry in the Battlefield franchise, earning both critical acclaim and player adoration. Its success on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Windows attested to its widespread appeal and enduring legacy. Join the Nerd Section community. Like this video and subscribe for the latest in video games, movies, tech, tabletops, and more. Battlefield 5, released in 2018, marked the 16th installment in the popular Battlefield series, developed by DICE and published by Electronic Arts. Positioned as a return to the franchise's World War II roots, this game brought with it a mix of both innovation and controversy, making it a fascinating chapter in the series' history. Set against the backdrop of the Second World War, Battlefield 5 diverges from the traditional narrative routes taken by its predecessors. Instead of a linear campaign, the game employs a war stories format, presenting standalone episodes that explore different perspectives of the war from various theaters and characters. These war stories cover a Norwegian resistance fighter, British misfits engaging in special operations missions, Senegalese tirailleurs, and even one focus on a German tank crew. Each story offers a rich personal insight into the diverse experiences of those who fought in World War II, making the narrative component of Battlefield 5 a poignant and varied exploration of the war. On the gameplay front, Battlefield 5 preserves the series' signature large-scale multiplayer battles while making significant tweaks to game mechanics. The emphasis on squad play was heightened, encouraging players to work more closely with their teammates. This iteration introduced a fortification system, allowing players to build and repair various defensive structures, adding an extra layer of strategy to the combat. The gunplay physics were refined, promoting more tactical and precise engagements. One of the most notable new features was the introduction of the Tides of War live service, which replaced traditional paid expansions with free updates and seasonal content. DICE's intention was to keep the player base unified by not splitting it with paid DLC packs, a practice that had caused friction in previous titles. However, Battlefield 5 was not without its controversies. The game's initial reveal faced backlash for perceived historical inaccuracies and the inclusion of female soldiers in frontline combat roles, which some fans argued was not authentic to the era. This sparked heated debates within the community, affecting the game's pre-launch momentum. Additionally, the marketing strategy and communications from EA and DICE sometimes exacerbated the situation, leading to a fractured relationship with parts of the fan base. Critically, Battlefield 5 received generally favorable reviews for its graphics, sound design, and the immersive nature of its multiplayer battles. The war stories were praised for their emotional storytelling, though some reviewers felt they were too short. Gameplay improvements were acknowledged, particularly the focus on team play and strategic depth. From a commercial perspective, Battlefield 5 had a mixed reception. It initially struggled with sales figures that fell short of EA's expectations. Despite this, the game maintained a dedicated player base, thanks in part to ongoing updates and events provided through the Tides of War live service. Over time, player sentiment became more positive as the game evolved and new content was added. When compared to previous Battlefield games like Battlefield 1, which was set during World War I, Battlefield 5 offered a more complex and varied depiction of warfare with enhanced mechanics and more personalized storytelling. However, the controversy and initial reception were rougher than Battlefield 1, which had been praised for its fresh take on World War I and relatively smooth launch. Battlefield 5 was released across multiple platforms, including PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Windows. The game employed the Frostbite 3 engine, delivering stunning visual and audio fidelity that players have come to expect from the Battlefield series. In conclusion, Battlefield 5 is a multifaceted entry in the Battlefield series, celebrated for its ambitious storytelling and refined gameplay, but marred by launch controversies and mixed player reception. Despite its rocky start, the game found a stable footing with continued support and updates, retaining a loyal player base and evolving into a well-regarded part of the series' legacy. Battlefield 2042 represents a significant installment in the long-running Battlefield franchise, developed by DICE and published by Electronic Arts. Released on November 19, 2021, this game made its debut on multiple platforms including PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and Series S, and Windows. Its launch was highly anticipated given the series' storied history and reputation for delivering large-scale immersive multiplayer warfare. Set in a near-future world teetering on the edge of global catastrophe, Battlefield 2042 departs from the historical settings of some of its recent predecessors, notably Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5, which focused on World War I and World War II, respectively. Instead, it plunges players into a speculative future where climate disasters and geopolitical instability have transformed nations into fragmented entities. In this world, players take on the roles of specialists, each with unique gadgets and abilities, operating within a phenomenon known as the No-Pats, international soldiers without allegiance to any one country. One of the most lauded aspects of Battlefield 2042 is its map design. The game features some of the largest and most dynamic maps ever seen in the franchise, meticulously crafted to support up to 128 players on next-gen consoles and PC, while limiting the count to 64 players on previous-gen consoles. Players are thrown into various global hot zones, ranging from a flooded cityscape in the Indian Ocean to Egypt's arid deserts, each bringing its own environmental challenges and tactical opportunities. The hallmark gameplay experience that Battlefield franchises are known for, spectacular vehicle combat, destructive environments, and large-scale infantry warfare, remains prominent in Battlefield 2042. This time, the game introduces unprecedented levels of environmental destruction and player interaction. Dynamic weather events such as tornadoes and sandstorms can drastically alter the battlefield, contributing to the chaos and demanding quick adaptability from players. However, Battlefield 2042 was not without its criticisms. One of the key drawbacks highlighted by many players was the lack of a single-player campaign, a staple element present in many earlier Battlefield titles. Instead, the game focuses purely on multiplayer modes, which led to disappointment among fans who appreciated the narrative depth and emotional impact of previous campaigns. The game also faced technical issues at launch, including server instability, performance glitches, and balancing problems, which marred the experience for many players and became a focal point of early reviews. Major features in Battlefield 2042 include the all-out warfare mode, encompassing the traditional conquest and breakthrough modes with larger, more chaotic confrontations. The introduction of Hazard Zone, a high-stakes, squad-based mode focused on gathering and extracting valuable data drives amidst hostile opposition, offered a new competitive angle. Portal mode became a standout feature, enabling players to create and share custom game modes using assets from past Battlefield titles, including 1942, Bad Company 2, and Battlefield 3, adding a nostalgic layer and near infinite replayability to the game. In terms of commercial success, Battlefield 2042 had a mixed reception. The game achieved strong initial sales, bolstered by the franchise's robust fan base and the allure of next-gen multiplayer warfare. However, it struggled with ongoing player retention due to its technical flaws and the absence of a single-player experience. Feedback regarding its gameplay innovations was polarizing. While some praised the evolution in maps, weather dynamics, and specialist roles, others felt these changes disrupted the series' core dynamics. Overall, Battlefield 2042 is a notable entry in the series that embodies both the potential and pitfalls of evolving a beloved gaming franchise. Its ambitious scope, innovative features, and expansive multiplayer environments highlight DICE's commitment to pushing the boundaries of the genre, while its launch issues and design choices serve as reminders of the delicate balance between innovation and tradition in the gaming world. And that concludes today's deep dive into the Nerdverse. Keep the excitement going by checking out our next video. Keep dreaming big and geeking out. We'll see you in the next episode.